Gary?
How do you think that like this whole movement of, becoming private, declaring one's freedom, like how do you think this whole game that we're playing, this freaking paperwork game, how does it tie into the spiritual path, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's the same because the one of the laws of nature is that free will, and so that also means we have the right to contract, that we have the right to make agreements, and so this entire thing with sovereignty and with reclaiming your what they're calling a straw man or like an legis or something is actually just about learning how to contract. Because a lot of people don't know that you make a contract when you eat certain foods, you make a contract when you say certain things to someone, you make a contract when you do certain physical activities, with everything you do is a requires another party, whether that
Gosh.
party be living or not, an energy, something, something or someone. Always requires an other. And so the dynamic between those two things is what's being revealed in the sovereignty movement, that we were being told, don't do your due diligence, don't take your time and try to understand the decisions you're making. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Time is running out. Do this or you're not going to be where you're supposed to be, right? There's a presumption. Everything is operating under assumption and presumption. We're assuming someone to be acting in a commercial capacity when really they're not. We're assuming people to be having a certain motive or certain understanding when we really don't have that.
Brendon.
Greetings. Y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Sounds good. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, nice, man. First shot. Dang, dog. Let's just hope this camera works the whole way through. It's our first time using a new camera setup, so let's hope it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a new phone, so hopefully it looks good.
Oh, rock and roll, man. Are you in Texas or Florida today?
I am in Texas today.
Oh, right on, man. How's your day going?
Day's going very well. A bunch of unexpected stuff happened, so it'll just be me today on the show. But things are going very well. Just things had to be attenuated too.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah. All right. Well, yeah, let's kind of hop right into it, especially, if you got a crazy day. Man, really appreciate you making some time to hop on this meeting with us and, give us some of your time. It's a really important time to be alive. A lot of crazy change happening in the world and for people. And I kind of feel, I think, speaking for both of us, is that you're on the forefront, helping people unplug from the matrix, helping people, take back, or I shouldn't even say take back, but just declare their freedom and liberty. And so, yeah, thanks a lot. And so just to kind of bring up to speed, so Brendon, what was your last name? Sorry.
If we're gonna get technical, my last name is Jackson and my family name is Jones.
Oh, okay. So, Brendon Jones, and you're the CEO, the founder of Credit Repair Experts, right?
Yes, that's correct. I am the CEO, yes, and co-founder for Credit Repair Experts. That's correct.
Nice. And how long has that been around?
We've been in business since 2020,
Okay.
prompted very much so by the shutdown of the country.
Really? That was the big catalyst?
Yes, I originally actually owned and operated a landscaping business. And then once the country shut down, I lost like 90% of my clients. And so I needed something else to make ends meet in the meantime. And then it ended up scaling. And now we're here today. Very happy.
Yeah. I'm one of your clients. And
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
also very excited to have you on here because, I watched a lot of your videos and, man, just a plethora of information. It's insane how much you have. So I'm super excited to chat with you and talk about all of the, tips or whatever you guys want to give out to help bless people.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I'll be honest, I've been traveling so much. There's been a lot of things in the finance world that I've been doing outside of this business So I haven't uploaded as much as I should, but I'm hoping that this podcast here will help re-spark my intention and my ability to continue to put out more content out there because I have a lot of requests for this stuff. I still get calls every single day, people talking about some of the more nuanced part of the financial and credit system that most people don't know about. So I appreciate you guys having me on here and giving me the ability to talk about this thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you wouldn't mind, I mean, for the people that watch this, kind of what's your story? Where were you born? What was your childhood like? Stuff like that.
So I was actually born in Arlington. I was born here where I'm very close to where I'm at right now. And then at around 3 years old, my father got a job with the General Service Administration in Atlanta, and I lived out in North Atlanta in a town called Woodstock for about 10 years.
I know
And then
Woodstock very well.
yeah, Woodstock, Georgia. Um, and I was homeschooled, so I was not really I didn't really know a lot about the public school culture or kind of the we went to church like 5 times a week. I studied the Bible as much as an 8-year-old can study. Went to choir, went to, did a lot of group activities, and was really thankful I got a very quality education from my mother. And then once we moved back to Texas when I was 13, my mother had to start working. And so I started going to public school, and that's when I started to realize, kind of what we talk about the matrix. That's when I really started to kind of see what that really was. I never really thought of myself as anybody special or someone like, you know, I realize now I'm a little more hyper intelligent than, my peers generally, but I didn't think that way really until I got into public school. And I did very well. I graduated at the top of my class. I got a full ride scholarship to University of Texas. I studied physics and math, but I haven't used any of that information at all that I studied. I actually was in the library reading about metaphysics and spiritual stuff actually more in college than I did any of my coursework. Um, and then when I left school, I I started my landscaping business, and then a few years after that, the country shut down, and then I started this credit restoration company, and with the intention of helping people because I was seeing what was happening with the mortgages. They're doing the mortgage moratorium. There was all these new rules with credit reporting. People were having all kinds of wacky stuff happening to not even just their credit, but just finances in general. Turns out in like 2021, like the beginning of 2021, the IRS destroyed like 3 or 5 million paper returns. All kinds of crazy stuff was happening. Uh, I know I have a friend of mine actually who he filed a FinCEN complaint on TD Bank, and TD Bank actually, and then about a month later, the SEC announced an investigation on TD Bank, and then about a month after that, their headquarters of their information storage and data management facility burned down.
Oh, that's
So
convenient.
yeah, so I was, the whole that whole shebang really was a big learning experience for me. Um, the normal methods that most credit restoration companies use kind of had to go to the wayside. We had to kind of we had to basically scrap and start up from square one to figure out how we were going to address this issue of having things being unlawfully reported and damaging our reputation, when in fact we were never given any lawful consideration in the first place. We were never loaned any money to begin with, and so it's really kind of about playing the system. I understand very well that the money is, not backed by anything or not real, but I still encourage my clients to meet those obligations with Federal Reserve notes while we're getting them into that higher level. Learn how to play the game, learn how to do the basic combos before you start trying to do all the, long one frame link combos for all my gaming nerds out there.
Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, you got to learn how to throw a jab before you're doing Hadoukens.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, I mean, that kind of takes me all the way down to kind of the questions I had at the end. But what would you say specifically differentiates credit repair experts from all of these other, credit solution companies out there?
So we really try as much as we can to be a one-stop shop for people. Not only are we going to help you restore your credit, but we're also going to help you leverage that credit once it's where we want it to be. And then we also encourage you to build business credit, and we have a full concierge package for building the business side of credit because really the entire financial world is moving towards business. And since I don't know really how much y'all have talked about on your shows previously. I don't know what the audience knows, but the name that you put on your credit card applications is treated like a business in many ways. And so we encourage our clients also to really get adept and really get educated on what the business side of the financial world looks like, how businesses are treated versus individuals, and we encourage them to utilize that system to their advantage and to as much as you can try to leverage your credit because I'm also very fortunate that I'm going to be raising capital and managing a very successful hedge fund here in the next month. It'll be launching. And we just have a lot of outlets that people can take their credit or their money or really whatever they're doing and use that to increase that amount that they're creating. And then we also our our philosophy, our desire is not just to help people, but it's also to propagate a very specific mission, which is to bring back what is called in the Sanskrit language Sanatana Dharma, or bring back just a natural way of living. And we can do that while still embracing technology and embracing innovation, in my opinion. Just making sure that we're the ones on top, we're the ones controlling the change rather than the change controlling us. And so that's what makes our company very special. And we're still like we're family owned, we're veteran owned, where we we understand where people are at. So we're really about helping people first before we are about the bottom line. The business actually wasn't profitable for a while by itself. What made it profitable was the networking and the bringing a lot of the people who had come into the program, even though they needed help with their credit, they had a lot of other things that they were bringing value to the table, you know. And so that really catapulted me into my other business ventures that I do everything in trust. And so very, very thankful to be where I'm at now. So we're
Yeah.
definitely what makes us unique is our mission. We really have a much broader scope than most credit repair businesses. Most of them are just trying to get you in and get you out and just volume. They're just focusing on straight volume. I worked in sales. I used to sell for another credit repair company called FES. I believe they changed their name to UWE. But all that was just volume. You were just selling, 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 selling. But you weren't you were never really following up, and you really weren't really concerned with whether that individual got the help that they needed or not. And so I'm very thankful to that that's not the case with our company.
Nice.
Right. I noticed that one thing that really, gosh, is just so hard is um, there's so much information out there about credit repair, about building business credit, but there isn't really a roadmap. Everyone's just trying to sell you, a monthly membership, and then it's kind of like, hey, follow these videos or whatever. And I've paid for quite a few of them, and I haven't really. I've gotten some ideas of what to do, right? But it's not really. It doesn't give you the whole roadmap, if that makes sense. So one thing that but I have noticed that I think I'm 1 month in on your guys' deal, and I was a 670, and I'm already a 690, which is pretty cool. But I do have business. But one thing I'm having a problem with is like my DUNS number. My DUNS guy is impossible to get a hold of, and my DUNS number is still showing up as a zero. And I have quite a few different accounts that I pay monthly to. So I don't know if anybody else is stuck at this, but yeah, the business credit side of it has been very, very difficult for me to figure out. So
Yeah,
um,
I
what?
will say in particular with Duns and Bradstreet, they
Yeah.
have been changing their whole compliance requirements,
Mm.
and they've been changing a lot of the people who have been doing this space for a while, the business credit, they're really not keeping tabs on the changes. And that's why you're not the first person to tell me that. People are seeing some delays. And one of the things that I've noticed is that because I remember just a few years ago, you could get a DBA for your name, for your personal name, and then get an EIN, a sole proprietorship EIN for it. And then you could create a Dun and Bradstreet number with your name. And people were doing that when they were like going to court, or they're dealing with traffic tickets, or they're dealing with debts. They were trying to basically recategorize it as a business transaction rather than as a personal transaction. And so Duns and Bradstreet completely changed the way that they do their compliance. And so
Interesting. Yeah, that's a quite the hack there.
Yeah. I've been all of my businesses in a trust. So yeah, just trying to build that has been, gosh, I'm lost as shit. So what once so when do we move from credit repair to the business side? Like when does all that stuff start?
don't actually have to wait at all.
Okay.
You can actually participate uh, in the business credit development program while you're going through credit repair. That's another nice thing about it.
Okay.
Because we eventually want to get you to where you don't ever have to use your consumer credit for your businesses.
Hmm.
Where your business credit is solid enough that you can be getting business loans and you can be getting corporate credit cards without using any of your personal information. That's
Okay.
really the end goal.
Is this strategy and the steps that we're taking now as far as setting up the DUNS number, like I have an American Express under my trust EIN, building that up, gas cards, things like that. Is that the road that you recommend taking as far as building the business's credit?
I mean, if you're doing it through a trust, yes. I mean, it just totally depends on what kind of trust you have. Some people want to keep their trust completely private and not even get a bank account with it. Some people do the opposite and they treat their trust almost exactly like a LLC. They just benefit from that tax advantage. So there's really two sides to the spectrum, and you can fall with whatever way that you want to with trust specifically. But if you have a LLC, or if you have a corporation that you're filing business taxes for, you absolutely should be doing everything through the business as much as possible. That's the whole reason you got it, is to basically create that entity and build it up. So if you're just talking like from a corporation standpoint, yes, you absolutely should. What you're talking about, get the DMB set up, get the business experience, get the business Equifax going. If you're really trying to get into it, pay for some reporting, pay for that business reporting so you see what's going on. Start learning about UCC1 filings, because y'all could help each other business to business, loaning each other money and building each other's businesses much more self-supporting.
Mm.
Oh,
That's what I talk about.
wow. So when you just said that about, depending on what one wants to do with their trust, man, that really makes me think about how I even structured my own and Ken too, is not even needing to get like an EIN. Is that the trust, like my trust, Galactic Trust, could own Galactic LLC, and Galactic LLC is what I'm working on building that credit, or even the holding company, and then but the owner is the trust, which is totally private.
Yeah, so that's another thing too. Like with ownership, you want to get really careful when you're intermingling public and private entities. Rather than ownership, you would rather, because ownership always implies liability in the commercial world. Instead, you want to have an arm's length contractual relationship with your LLC, meaning like, for example, for this is what I do, for example, with Credit Repair Experts LLC, generally speaking, makes its money off of marketing, and the trust hires Credit Repair Experts LLC to market the credit repair product that the business trust offers.
So who's
And
the
so
manager of Credit Repair Experts LLC?
that I'm the CEO. I'm the
Oh,
CEO of
okay.
that company. So that's again, I'm also the if when I filed with the Secretary of State, my person is considered the member, right? So it has a consumer credit report. So when I'm operating with the public, that person and that LLC are the ones that is interfacing with the commercial world. And then the private trust, while it still has a bank account, it's the one that's processing, some of the larger transactions and then paying the LLC for bringing in clients.
Interesting. Wow, man. I mean, that was a big one just right in and of itself. With regards to UCC1, what are your thoughts in regards of people like, leaning against the person's name and stuff like that?
They have all the right to do that. They just need to be aware of what exactly it is that they're doing. A lot of people just watch YouTube videos or read something and say, "Oh, if you file a UCC1, you become sovereign." I hear people say that all the time. Like they'll call me and they'll be like, "Yeah, I did what I needed to do. I filed my UCC1," but then they don't really know what to do after that. All the UCC1 is a notice of lien and the commercial chamber. You still have to actually perfect the lien by posting some collateral and filing a security agreement between yourself and the debtor, right? And that still has to be, you have to notify the land on the land record with the county, as well as the commercial realm in the commercial chamber, usually at the Secretary of State's office in your particular state. So, yes, those are key things that you want to be executing, but a lot of people don't really know what it is. So before you start doing stuff, really take your time, don't rush. Take your time and try to understand what exactly am I doing when I file a UCC1. You are not putting a lien on anything if you file a UCC1. Okay, you are notifying the public of a lien. It's a notice of lien. And so you should have a lien in place by having some type of security agreement that gives you security interest, that secures your interest in the thing.
So a security agreement meaning like, okay, if I file a UCC1 notice of lien against the person and the debtor is a trust, then there could be a security agreement saying, hey, the trust lent the person some silver.
Yes, that's how, like, for example, a lot of out in like Arkansas, for example, when they do loans on like tractors, they'll file a UCC1, and that UCC1 will reference a security agreement that the lender has filed with the county, stating that they're giving this loan is being collateralized by this tractor, and if they don't pay on the loan, then the creditor has the right to liquidate the security interest and take the tractor back. So car companies never do this. That's why I can remove repossessions off people's credit reports, because they don't actually have a lien on the car. They've abandoned the property. Usually the car is abandoned once it hits the lot, even before it gets into a consumer's hands. So that's just factors like that make all the difference when you're dealing in the commercial world. So
Wow.
definitely take your time and learn it before you start executing and start just copying stuff you see on YouTube.
Yeah, because like Ken said, I mean, there's just so much information out there these days. I mean, there's so many tactics. Geez, I have, David Windmiller. I've got a live life claim with a picture of myself and some hair and blood and oh my God, all this stuff. But I mean, I kind of want to go back to your story, homeschooled, going to church, 5 days a week. And then when you're 13, you go back into the public school system. What was kind of the catalyst that kind of shifted things, especially in your story? You talk about, you're going to church and reading from the Bible, more than 90% of the people out there. And then when you go to public school and you go to college, you're studying, metaphysics and spiritualism and all this stuff. What was the catalyst? What was the shift there?
Well, so when my father worked for the General Service Administration, um, some people in the audience may know, but the General Service Administration deals with all the bonds and deals with all the contracting with the government, including with the courts and things like this. And because my father was working for the federal government, I was seeing exactly, what that was. Uh, how it was like a business. I thought that the government was like kind of looking out for us, but I really saw that it was like a business. And then um, my father ended up getting in trouble with the legal system, which then prompted me to start studying law. And when I started studying law, I started seeing how it was tied in biblically. I started seeing how the Bible really actually is the basis, and Congress declared it. I believe it's either 1972 or 1974 that they declared that the Bible was the Word of God and that it was like the supreme law that they based all their legislator off of. And once I saw that, I started to see how the Bible, at least in my opinion, was not really a literal description of history, but rather a codified book on business and commerce and trust, as well as it was written in such a way that there were layers to it where you could see that it was talking about metaphysical principles, it was talking about commercial principles, and then it was talking about moral principles. And that for most of us, we don't really get past the moral part. And as I started to get older and was asking more questions, detailed questions about God, myself, and the relationship that I have with Him, I started to notice that I really wasn't being given satisfactory answers or information. And so once I got into public school, that's when I was really exposed to something outside of my Southern Baptist background, right? Generally speaking, the public school I considered more secular. While I grew up in Texas, so there was still definitely that influence. It was generally frowned upon to really be too religious, if you will. And then as I got older, I started to ask even more deeper metaphysical questions at the church, and the people working there, while even though they're kind and meant well, really didn't know how to answer me. And so I started exploring different faiths. I was a Christian missionary for a little bit, and then I became a Muslim, and then I started working with the Buddhists, with different what people would call Hindu sects. Even tried Scientology for a little bit. And it wasn't for me, at least, that I started reading books written by Srila Prabhupada of the Hare Krishna movement that I got a deeper scientific understanding of God and ourselves and our relationship with Him. And once I got to that point, that's when things really started to shift, and that happened about 6 years ago. So the majority of my teenage life after high school was really just kind of exploring purpose and trying to find purpose. And now that I have found that purpose, now it's about executing that purpose, executing that mission. So really I guess I could say what at first prompted everything was, trying to keep the relationship with my father very strong when studying the legal system, and then getting older, seeing how the Bible tied into everything, and then seeing the actual truth behind what the Bible was trying to convey. Um, a combination of those things, and I have to thank Krishna for that, really kind of changed everything for me. And now here I am, and I've been meeting a lot of people who are either very wealthy, very influential, or just high value in general. And they just immediately have that trust in me. There's like a recognition almost. And it's just confirmation that this is a spiritual experience, and that we're just recognizing or picking back up where we left off. A lot of these relationships that I'm forming now recently. These are not new relationships. These are relationships that I've had in the past. I just don't remember. And but I do, and I don't. I don't consciously remember, but there's a recognition. There's a familiarity there. So it's been like a progressive awakening of that understanding of the spiritual reality as I continue to get older.
Because I've had this conversation even with, I got a 7-year-old son upstairs that tells me that we've been together in multiple past lives and stuff like that. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is that, through your journey and your awakening, like you're attracting these relationships that, while they may manifest and take shape in physical form in the particular body that they're in here and now, but you're just picking up where you left off in another life.
Yes, that's always what it is, at least according to our scripture in the Sanatan scriptures. It tells us that if you're, especially if you have like either a business or a family relationships with someone, you've had thousands and thousands of lifetimes together, in different capacities.
Yeah. So would you say, because here's another idea I've played around with, is that the purpose of life and the physical reality is to have experience to then progress and grow as spiritual beings.
Absolutely. The purpose of life is to remember that we're the soul, not the body, and then to remember our relationship with the Supreme Soul, and then once we remember our relationship with the Supreme Soul, to then help the other souls awaken. But there's just because we live in a free will world, there's no force. You can't
Right.
force anyone to do that, but that is the purpose. And then ultimately, the reason we do all of those things is for happiness. It's actually to experience bliss, but bliss is something that lasts rather than what we think that we're getting happiness from in the material world, where we have the law of depreciation, where the happiness that we get from the material world is always depreciating and decreasing, whereas the happiness that we get spiritually is always increasing. So that is the purpose, is to rewind that tendency or that illusion to seek happiness in the outside world and in the material, and then to reverse that polarity and seek shelter and happiness in the spiritual world that exists within. That is the
I
purpose.
I have so many friends that put all of their happiness into things that they have, right? Like their house, their four wheeler, their boat, their trucks, their Escalade, all the things that they just rack up, and really, it just enslaves you to these items, and most of these people, they couldn't miss a day of work or even a month of work because their bills are so high. So I just loved hearing you say that. That was great.
Thank you.
How do
Yes,
you
it's
go ahead?
go ahead. No, go ahead, Gary.
How do you think that like this whole movement of becoming private, declaring one's freedom, like how do you think this whole game that we're playing, this freaking paperwork game, how does it tie into the spiritual path, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's the same because the one of the laws of nature is that free will, and so that also means we have the right to contract, that we have the right to make agreements, and so this entire thing with sovereignty and with reclaiming your what they're calling a straw man or like an legis or something is actually just about learning how to contract, because a lot of people don't know that you make a contract when you eat certain foods, you make a contract when say certain things to someone, you make a contract when you do certain physical activities, with everything you do is a requires another party, whether that
Gosh.
party be living or not, an energy, something, something or someone. It always requires an other. And so the dynamic between those two things is what's being revealed in the sovereignty movement, that we were being told, don't do your due diligence, don't take your time and try to understand the decisions you're making. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Time is running out. Do this or you're not going to be where you're supposed to be, right? There's a presumption. Everything is operating under assumption and presumption. We're assuming someone to be acting in a commercial capacity when really they're not. We're assuming people to be having a certain motive or certain understanding when we really don't have that. Hang on one second. I'm gonna turn this on Do Not Disturb. Okay. Y'all can still hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, great.
Okay, good. So, um, yeah, there's an assumption there of business activity that is not really being disclosed. And so, but you're still being made the offer to conduct in that capacity, and people are accepting it without questioning what it is, right? I don't know anybody who read the Facebook terms and conditions when they opened a Facebook account, right? I'm not saying you need to read all the whole thing. But I'm saying is that if they got to give you a 3,000 page disclosure for you to open up a social media website and you have to agree to the contract in order to get it, there it's a revealing. The whole thing is just contractually based. Everything.
Yeah, yeah, it goes back to even just the certificate of live birth. I mean, within 5 minutes of coming out into this world, you are put into contract. And like you said, there's such a rush that like your mother, who's not even considered a mother, but an informant, is that, hey, hurry up and sign this. Let's get this thing moving. So that's interesting, and I love how you put that as it's not only all contract, but then when you're on this spiritual path, it's like, and when you can see the contracts and everything, then it inspires one to be more honorable in one's dealings because everything is contract.
Yeah, it does to people who have a spiritual proclivity. Because you also realize, and I mean this in a respectful way, but 99% of the population does not have a spiritual proclivity. They have a proclivity towards gratifying their senses. And it's
Right.
because they're under the illusion that they're this body. That is the main illusion that is causing all the problems in the world. The only reason we have any problems is because we're acting from the bodily concept of life, which is false. So because we're acting from a false pretense, all the results or the anticipated results of those actions are also not what we intended them to be. We're trying, and everybody wants the same thing. They want eternal, lasting happiness. They want peace. So we're not getting either of those things by increasing our material position. And that's a problem. So unless that material thing is engaged in service, in spiritual service, in devotional service, unless it's engaged in those things, it doesn't give you that lasting happiness that you're presuming or assuming that you're going to be receiving from this material endeavor that you're doing, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that the endeavor itself is bad, but you're starting up from the wrong pretext. It's like buying a ticket to go to Houston when your intention is to go to New York. It doesn't matter how many tickets you buy. It doesn't matter what time of the day you buy it. It doesn't matter if you go through a travel agency. It doesn't matter how nice the transportation is, or it's by plane, by boat, by car. It doesn't matter what the material circumstance is. You're not on the wrong path. You're not going the right way. You will never get to the destination you're trying to get to by going the wrong direction.
Right.
And this is where we dispel the what's called radical universalism, where everyone says all paths lead to the same thing. That's like me telling you that if you buy a ticket to New Mexico, you're going to go to Las Vegas. That's just not a fact. If you buy a ticket to Oregon, you're going to go to Mexico City. That doesn't make any sense. The path is going to be determine what the end result is. So if a path is different, we can reasonably, conclude that it's going to yield a different result.
Yeah, once one wakes up and realizes that they've been buying that ticket to Dallas when they're trying to go to New York, that is when they can make those changes. Because yeah, like you said, hey, all roads don't lead to Rome. The road that leads to Rome, and that road is sometimes arduous. It is there's obstacles and there's challenges, and that's why many people would rather just get stuck in that cycle of karma where they just keep buying the same ticket and beating their head against the wall, playing that same game over and over again.
Absolutely. That's exactly what is happening. They're repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting that the feeling or the experience or the happiness that they're going to get is somehow going to change.
Sorry.
Oh, well, the illusion is so strong. And so the way that we break that illusion is we have to ask for help. We have to ask for the Creator to help us, because we are not all powerful, but He is.
Do you think that the old illusion is crumbling, and through that crumbling and through that what I would call like stimulation in the form of what some would call pain, that pain is stimulating people to wake up and to question the old illusion, to question the matrix? And so, that being said, it's almost like the point I've come to, at least, that I don't have to try. I just have to listen to my intuition. It's like this. I don't play my guitars, or excuse me, my guitars don't play themselves. I play them. And just like my thoughts are not mine. And the more I can live in harmony with the all, then I can just let go and kind of be like, hey, just go with it. And so I see that the illusion is dying, it is crumbling, and through that crumbling, many people they're being shooken awake, and they're realizing, oh my God, I've been buying this ticket to Dallas my whole entire life. And now I've been shooken awake, and I can see, oh my gosh, I've been buying this ticket. Oh, let me make these changes. Then they can say, oh my gosh, nice, I'm on my way to New York.
Yes, exactly. That's essentially what's happening, and all of that, I believe, is designed that way. We're in a very special time. We're in a very special time where simultaneously we're in a degraded age where the material society just keeps getting less and less favorable. But it's also a mini golden age where there are many very powerful souls that have come onto this planet in order to perform a very special mission. And so I think for those people, the illusion's definitely breaking. But there are also a very, very large percentage of people who are willfully just going along with the crumbling illusion. Because I mean, I could say for me that it's crumbling, but for example, I went to the bank the other day, and not one banker in the entire bank knew that it was illegal to loan depositors money. They had no idea. They didn't even know within their own job how the loans were being generated, how the money really worked. So if they don't even know that about their own job, then their understanding of what's going on in the world and the perspective that they have is going to be similar.
Yeah, it's kind of like a riptide in the ocean, is that, those that are closer to the matrix and more plugged in, as it goes down, they're going to be sucked down with it. Yeah. But if you can wake up before the pull is too great, then you can swim to safety.
Well, and one thing I want to go back to is you saying that going into the bank, they didn't really know their own job. And we don't have to dive too much into this because I don't want to help people into dishonor, but is that how people are getting free cars and all of this stuff, is just basically because they know, but the people at the banks and the car dealerships don't really know their own job?
Yeah, so what they're doing is that they're just giving consideration to the bank, and they're communicating to the bank, and the bank has no choice but to accept all money of like kind. So they're not getting it for free. They're just not giving them Federal Reserve notes or bank credit. They're actually giving them credit that's derived off of the account that they have with the Social Security Administration and the United States Treasury. So that is how people are doing that. It's just that, for example, a lot of people are doing things in a way that they're really trying to do everything for free without giving consideration. I know some people who will file 1099 OIDs, for example, and they'll put 9 times the amortization on a bank account when you don't really know how much your account was monetized for. Only the bank knows that, and they're supposed to be the ones filling out the OID and not you. You just sign it once you see the numbers that they write down. Right. So things like that, like people are kind of getting greedy with it and seeing like, oh, this is a nice get out of jail free card. So, but at the same time, there are a lot of people who are finding success because they understand I'm giving consideration. And all of our statutes and codes are based off of the Uniform Commercial Code. And the Uniform Commercial Code tells us that as long as payment is rendered in a particular kind of coin or currency that is accepted within that particular commercial space, then there's certain rules in order for them to reject that payment. And if they don't follow those rules, then they must accept.
So let's dive into that. So for those that may or may not know, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. So when we're born, a bond is created based on our birth, making essentially us lending our life force, our labor. They're creating a bond on that value. That value is then, boom, you're given a Social Security number, just like a tracking number. On the back of that card, most people don't know, there's a red number, and this is a trust. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. The Social Security Administration is itself a trust, and you have the back is the account that you have with that trust. The back of any document is normally supposed to be the private side of the document, and the front is the public.
What? Yeah, all right. So, okay, so that's true. So there, and as we go on in life and we graduate from high school, some people go to college, you become a doctor, you're a degenerate like me, is based on your life's work, your account is going to reflect that?
Yes and no. I mean, they do a future projection of what that is. That's why the bond market, there's certain prices because the market is pricing in what they believe the strength of the credit of the government is going to be, right? So with the same way, my bond might be worth more than my neighbor's, even though we were born on the same day, because maybe my parents have a better job, maybe they have their backgrounds different, maybe, there's a lot of other factors that are looked into on how they speculate the value of them. But then what they also do is they pool them all together and kind of create like an aggregate, just like they do with mortgages. And so I mean, to basically put it in a really simple way, really the whole system is predicated on speculation. And so the value of these instruments are really speculatory. They're not really like concrete, whereas there's a set unit and measure when real goods and services are used. All these commercial paper is having interest in property, and for the most part, interest was never a part of most financial systems until more recently in human history. Interest was actually something, there's interest and then usury. And both of those things were considered to be actually detrimental to the society because it propagated speculation and propagated people being able to not give any value and still obtain a lot of the wealth. And that's what's happened right now is that the balance is kind of being skewed. A lot of people who have all this wealth really don't give any value to society. And so they actually end up becoming a burden rather than benefiting the people.
Interesting. So, what personal experience have you had with these accounts or with these trusts?
Well, I have my experience started with my father getting in trouble with the legal system and then me myself actually encountering the judiciary many times because when they open up court cases, they're opening up a new trust that's a trust account that they're opening and they're assessing a debt within that trust and trying to hold somebody responsible for paying the debt, which they usually end up holding your straw man as the liable party. And since the straw man's insolvent and in debt, then they have to call on the surety to make the payment on behalf of that debtor. And they hold your body as that surety in the criminal side, or your property, such as your homes or your cars, on the civil side.
How does one expressly differentiate their body from being the surety on that trust or on the straw man?
You provide suretyship on behalf of that entity. So you come in and say, hey, so rather than my body, here's, let's say, 21 pieces of silver. Here's 21 pieces of here's a bond promising to pay 21 pieces of silver on demand for the bearer on demand, right? So that's an example. You can post a payment bond. You can post a surety bond from the General Service Administration because that's what the courts are doing. They're issuing out these bonds on your behalf and forging your signature. So studying all of that was really how I got into all this stuff first. That's how I started learning about commercial instruments. I learned that either the indictment or the information that's filed in the criminal case, for example, that's the charging instrument. That's the financial instrument that's being monetized because every single penal statute has a monetary value. It's called the penal sum, which is why you can ask the criminal courts, I need the penal sum for this case.
It's like the menu.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the menu in every single every single courtroom is a financial institution. Every single courtroom is just a clearinghouse for payments to the government. And then the court officers are getting commission to collect these debts, which are all taxable events. They create these taxable events so they can create a debt and an obligation, and then they hold your body as the collateral to satisfy those promises to pay.
Interesting. If you wouldn't mind, again, for the people that are watching this and meeting you for the first time, would you mind going deeper in that story of your dad? Because that's how one of the ways I first even learned about you was seeing a TikTok interview you did with someone talking about how you were able to get your dad out just based on the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah, so I'll give you guys the link because I have a full YouTube video where I explain the entire story. But to keep it brief, essentially, after my father finished working for the government, they actually got him into trouble because he knew certain information. He knew some key intelligence, and he was really no longer useful to them. So, and that was when I was young. I was 8 years old. Uh, and then once I got older, and my father was finished with all that, I intended to have him live with me. But then they tried to get him back wrapped up in it again, and that's when I went to. It was in Grand Junction, Colorado. I went there and literally all I did was I wrote a one-page letter and a motion. And the motion got rejected, but in the one-page letter, I asked the judge and the clerk to file the taxes on the bonds that were created in that particular court case. And when I asked for that, the judge said, "Who wrote this letter? I will not allow violence in this courtroom." And I asked him what violence he was talking about, and then he switched gears real quick and says, "You can't represent your father. You're not a licensed attorney." Well, there's a licensing authority in each state, and licenses are for businesses. So I just told the judge, I've never seen an attorney's license in my life. The only thing that you could possibly be referring to is a bar card, and those are issued by the Supreme Court of the state. So are you telling me that the Supreme Court of Colorado issues out business licenses? And if so, let me see yours because I've never seen one before. And when I said that, the judge just gets very, very quiet. And I ask him if this is a court of record, which it's not. And after asking him 3 times and him not answering, I got kicked out of the courthouse. And after they kick me out, they bring my father in, and the judge looks at him and says, "Russ, I'm going to let you go if you promise not to do it again." And, and I know that because my brother was still in the gallery while I was outside asking the sheriff why I'm being trespassed from a public building. And so after they release him, that's when, I knew this stuff was real, but I had never practically done anything like that. And then once I did that, it gave me that confidence. I realized everything I just said was correct. Not a single thing that I said was incorrect. Even though I didn't fully understand it, I knew that there was something behind it. And the reason I knew that was because I got such an emotional reaction out of a man who's literally been doing this for 3 decades, right? He's been doing this for so long. I shook him to his core and made him afraid of a 23-year-old, and that's
Wow.
when I knew it's not me, it's the information,
Right.
right? This information has to have potency, it has to have validity. And then after that, that's I just off to the races after that.
And how many years ago was that?
That was in September of 2019.
Wow, so about a year or right around the same time you launched Credit Repair Experts.
Yep. So about I guess it would be like about 6 months later.
Wow, fantastic.
Yep.
When we spoke on the phone a couple weeks ago, if you wouldn't mind, you talked about 3 Ps: personality. I forgot the other two now. Would you mind going into that a little bit? You said everything's based on like these 3 Ps.
Oh yeah, well it's personality, principalities, and oh, I'm not sure what the third one is, but it's essentially working with a higher power. So I guess power, but it's really like with divinity, with God, we're working with principles, with laws, with spiritual principles, and then we're working with individual souls. And everything is based off of understanding all this. So in the material aspect, what that means is in business, let's say, for example, it's all about relationships. It's really not about the information you have. I had many roommates in college who were really smart and had all this information and read all these books, but they really couldn't get anything done because they had no people skills. They had no way to talk to anybody or communicate their ideas, or really put any of their ideas into action. And it's the same way, it's really that way with everything. It's, learning information is so that you can do the thing. Learning information is not the end goal, it's the first step. So,
Hmm.
a lot of people kind of get stuck in like watching YouTube videos, and taking courses and doing all this stuff, but they really either they're not given the tools or they don't really understand that, okay, the next thing I have to do is I got to get my hands dirty and I have to be okay with failing, so that way I can actually get some real experience. And then that's when when you're unafraid to fail, you start meeting a lot of people. And that's what's been happening to me. I've just been unafraid and I've sat and, meditated upon decisions and just go with my initial, I guess you could say gut instinct or your intuition. Just go with that. And then, just be paying attention and be careful while you're making these moves.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I think you bring up a good point is, knowledge is the first step. The second step, getting your hands dirty. What would you have to say to people? Because from my own experience, at least, they've done such a good job of getting into one's conscious to be afraid of even filing, to even going to the courthouse. What would you have to say for people just getting on this path, and even veterans, that what you need to do, but man, making that filing. I filed, color of law violations against judges, and I'll tell you what, that shit is scary. Filing things and sending a notice to the sheriff and the attorney general and all this stuff. It's like, oh my God, am I going to go to jail or what? And so, what would you have to say to help people with that?
Well, so you might be learning the procedure and you might be learning like, okay, the what, but the one key piece of information that we always need to keep in mind is that we're dealing with personalities. So you're literally going up against a very highly organized criminal syndicate, okay? And you're trying to do it by yourself. So naturally your body's like, this is really stupid. We shouldn't go do that. We shouldn't go walk into the enemy's house and then demand that they treat us differently.
Mm.
Okay? That it's like coming into my house and telling me how I need to do things. What you have to do is turn the tables and reestablish where the actual venue is taking place. Even though you might be in the court building, they have to invoke the actual legal construct verbally on the record. And so you can do the same thing via the post office, for example. The post office is court, and you have witnesses, signatures, communications, relaying things. It is not necessary to actually step foot in court a lot of the time. And I learned that over time. I was fortunate in a lot of my courtroom dealings because I went in there unprepared by myself, and I went into enemy territory. But the enemy will react in two different ways. They'll either be scared and run away, which is what the judge did for me, or they'll fight you, right? It's fight or flight. So we have to realize that we're dealing with people who have a very base level consciousness. They're on fight or flight mode, and they have a very strong R complex, a very strong ego personality. And so you need to be extremely tactful in your dealings. I definitely recommend, because a lot of people, and this is how you practice being humble. A lot of times I pretended to be subservient, because I just wanted to get something done. Okay, I don't care if the judge thinks that he's powerful and he's sitting up there all high on the bench and I'm some little peon down here. If it means I'm going to get what I want, he can have whatever perception he wants. That's an example. But sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, right? So you also have to you learn how to be a master of psychology and just kind of read the room and kind of read what you need to do. What they do here in Texas is they just intimidate you. A lot of the time they send the police, CPS, they do all kinds of stuff. You have to be aware of what they're doing. It's still all basis commercially and contractually, and you have to enforce your contracts that you make with them, and you have to be hyper aware of the contracts you might already have with them and why a lot of the times what they're doing, they have the right to do because you gave it to them,
Right.
because contract is law. So keeping all those things in mind and not just running into the enemy territory and saying, you're not right, you need to do this, when all the judge is trying to do is enforce a contract that you agreed to.
Yeah. Well, and bringing up what, or taking it back to what Gary said, I bought the DIY credit repair kit that you guys have, but then actually seeing it, obviously that was, I was like, oh shit, this is way over my head, right? But I almost thought that maybe I should just go through it to learn all of the steps and learn it myself. But again, after a month of not doing it, I just signed up for your guys' deal because I was like, it's funny how like your brain can just immediately forget something that it's afraid to want to do.
Absolutely. And that happens a lot, actually. A lot of our clients, they start off that way because you think it's something like changing your oil. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just need to do it and then it's going to be good. But no, there's variables because, again, we're dealing with people, right? When you're changing your oil, it's just you and the truck.
Yeah.
All right. So anything that goes wrong is almost every time your fault. But in this case, uh, and then again, you got to be aware that if you're talking with, say, the credit reporting agencies, a lot of the times you're dealing with a computer. So you need to know how to treat a computer. Or if you're not trying to deal with a computer, you need to learn how to bypass that computer. And then once you bypass that, you need to know, well, who's the person that's now, assessing my communication or whatever, and understand what their role is and what they've been trained to do, right? So there's a lot more nuances with credit repair than other DIY things. Just because you're actually dealing with variable personalities, you might get someone who's just like, he works at a debt collector's office and he gets a dispute and it's $100 collection. It's going to cost him more in time to actually try to fight this than to just delete it and move on to the next one. Right. So that's really, I believe, again, what kind of overwhelms people is that we fail to recognize that on the higher level, we're always dealing with personalities, right? So with a company, we're dealing with the executives. They're the ones making all the rules. They're the ones, their knowledge is what determines, and their action upon that knowledge is what determines the success of that company. So, you need to know who you're dealing with. That's why some people prefer working with certain banks because of the personality culture that these businesses develop. And so, what we're dealing with now, for example, in the credit restoration space, I just have a bunch of clients now. They're not even sending out letters. They're just trying to email saying that, hey, we think that somebody else wrote this on your behalf. We're not going to answer the dispute, right? So that's them saying that we are super backed up. We're making stuff up right now, so that way we can stall. That's what that means.
Yeah.
And so a personality, an executive made that decision that, hey, we're going to make this a policy. So we have to, that I believe is what creates a lot of the difficulty.
Oh yeah, because that in and of itself, that hurdle is so many people aren't even gonna get over that hurdle. Just a generated response to their letter, and then they're stuck in their tracks.
Yes, and they're trying to make it harder on the credit restoration companies because now we have to explain to our clients like why we have to explain to them why we're oh hi, our godson. Our godson just fell asleep.
Oh, nice.
I'm in his room because he's usually playing during this time. So, um, um, because they're putting the pressure on the credit restoration companies, right? Because you may have told your client, here's a certain timeline, and they're extending that timeline so that way that the person trying to fix their situation stops trying. They're just trying to discourage you from pushing forward on what you know to be true and correct.
Right. Brendon, what would you say are 3 of the biggest lessons or things that you've learned on this journey of yours?
3 business lessons is number 1, patience. Be patient. You are not going to figure all this out in a year. You're not going to figure it out in a couple of years. You're not going to figure it out in a decade. You're never going to figure it out. It's not like a math problem where you're just like, aha. Again, we're dealing with personalities and we're constantly growing. Our soul is eternal. So patience, understanding that this is going to go on forever.
Mm.
Uh, whether it be in the commercial space or anything else that you're doing. Um, the second thing that I learned is that, again, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. So I just talk about that all the time. It's good to know things, and I'm not saying don't get educated, but what's the point of knowing something if you don't have someone to share that with or use that information with? There's really no point. It's like having a birthday cake and eating it all by yourself. You
Yeah.
don't make a birthday cake for just the birthday boy. You make the birthday cake for everybody.
Yeah.
Even though that cake is for his birthday, it's really for everyone else also.
That's why I'm
And
Totally.
excited
and
we met you.
yeah, yeah. So and then the third thing is that what would be the third one? I guess for me at least do not try to let your happiness lean upon outside circumstances.
Mm.
Do not get discouraged by results. Success, failure really doesn't matter at the end of the day. All the results are up to the creator. And so focus on this is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, focus on your duty and devote the fruits of your labor to me. So you have the right to work, but you don't have the right to the fruits of your work.
Mm.
Fruits of your work belong to the creator because the means to that work was not created by you. It was created by somebody far more powerful. So that also means that the result of that work is also not yours. You're just the
Right.
trustee. You're just the responsible party. You're just the
Right.
one who's in care of that
Yeah.
particular thing or endeavor. So
Wow.
always
Work,
keeping that in mind, keep you humble.
work for me and not for man, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
store ye not your treasures in gold and silver, but in the kingdom of heaven, as it said in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right. The kingdom of heaven is within us.
Yeah. Yes, and that's here. This is the temple, right?
Right.
Well, I have a temple here. It's not, you know, it's not this is not the temple. The temple's in here. I've created this to build that internal move.
Yes, you've created that to help you connect in here. The totems and the rituals that you do in front of that, it's all to get you re-centered in there. So another thing to that is, hey, unplug from the matrix. Unplug from the Maya, the illusion of, like we've talked about, hey, cars, clothes, all these material, possessions, hey, it's fine to have your cake and eat it too, but once you're centered in here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And once you do that, then I believe I'm someone who believes also in destiny. Our free will is really about how fast we want to get to that destiny. We want to do some side quests or something, or if we want to crawl, we want to walk, we want to swim, we want to drive, we want to fly. That's our decision. But at some point, we have to make it to our destination.
Right.
And so that's very important to keep in mind. So don't, try not to stress too much about the future or what if or like trying to control the situation because I can barely control my own internal organs. You know what I'm saying? I barely control my heart rate. I can't really tell my kidneys what to do. I don't really tell my liver what to do, or at least consciously. So how can I consciously affect things that happen outside of me?
Fantastic point. What would you say are where would you suggest people get started if they're just kind of new to this journey? Like we've said, there's, oh my gosh, so much information. Change your status, UCC1. Oh my gosh, this, that, or the other. Where would you suggest people start?
So I would definitely start with number one, buying a couple dictionaries, because really the whole thing with this is learning what the words mean. If you can speak the language and know what the words mean, it's really simple. Very, very simple. It's just like driving a car. Once you know that, all right, this is the gas, this is the brake, this is the steering, this is the gear. Once you know what it all is, then using it's not really that hard. Then it's just about practice. Then you start to get used to it, you start to feel it, but you at least know what it is. Like you can't play basketball until you know the rules. You can't double dribble, you have to shoot. All right, so I recommend getting Black's Law Dictionary for the
Mm.
law, or Bouvier, or Bouvier. Both are good. And then Barron's Dictionary they have financial terms, banking terms, real estate terms. I suggest starting with financial and investment terms and banking terms, getting those dictionaries. And then I'll send you guys some links to some documents that have been really helpful for me. There's a document I love to circulate called the Affidavit of Walker Todd that talks about the credit system in banking and how, what a promissory note is and kind of how money really works. There's another document, you guys can actually Google this one. It's called For Those of Us with Thick Skulls. That one is like basically a dummies PowerPoint presentation on what we've been talking about in terms of like what a straw man is, this fictional entity. And then there's on the law side, there's an encyclopedia called Corpus Juris Secundum. You're not going to find a lot of this information that's accurate on the internet. You're going to need to go into the law libraries. You're going to need to go to where the books and records are being kept because they've taken a lot of this stuff off the internet. So there are some YouTube videos that I recommend, but those YouTube videos are literally reading literature about this subject that was usually written like 100 years ago.
Wow.
What did you say that was it for those of us with thick skulls?
You have to send that to me. Okay. Yeah, for those of us with thick skulls.
Okay.
Okay.
Wayne Stump letter.
All right,
Wayne Stump.
Wayne Stump letter. What is that about?
It's a letter from Senator Wayne Stump to higher ups in Arizona about people removing their contracts with the United States government and going back to their equitable common law rights.
Okay.
And he basically tells them, yes, people can do this, and I want to know about it when they do it. So inform me.
Okay. We all heard it here first.
And
I
that was
haven't read that one yet, but I will be too.
Wayne Stump, like a tree stump?
Yeah, Wayne Stump. Yep.
Oh, man, I got good
letter.
hearing.
And
All
you said
right.
he was a senator?
Yep.
For
He's a senator for Arizona.
Arizona senator.
Awesome.
1985.
1985. Okay.
The PDF will pop right up and you can print it. It's already notarized and all that.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah,
Wow.
nice. Nice. Thanks, John. Nice. Well, gosh, Brendon, thanks so much for your time today. That was a fantastic conversation. Hear your story. Just a lot of gold nuggets in here for people.
Yeah.
Because I think a big problem with people is again, the Matrix has done such a good job, pledge allegiance to the flag, stick a needle in your eye, they don't think this stuff is real. They think it's against the law, they think all these things aren't real. And so, that's why we're doing what we're doing, trying to wake people up and just enlighten them to the understanding that, hey, this stuff is real, but
The spells are working.
yeah, you've got to be willing to go on the path. And yeah, great point. Yeah, the spells are working. Yeah.
Spells is a good word because it's all, the words.
Yeah.
Right.
Magic.
My good friend Keith says that all the time. Words and choices. That's
Right.
really the summation of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Nice. So, Brendon, where can people find you? What's the website? Any social media links? Anything like that?
Yeah, so for our company, so if you're for the credit restoration, it is live. It's still being changed some, but it's CRE Charlie Roger Edward .credit for our website that stands for Credit Repair Experts. And then I'll give you guys the link to my link tree, which has all of my social media pages and all that stuff. People can you guys can also donate to our trust. I have a charitable trust called the Sri Sandipani Prasada Trust, and we are working on agricultural projects as well as sponsoring young men and women in their education spiritually as well as in the our regular world. And so all of that will be in my link tree. And you can donate there. We encourage everybody to donate. You will benefit. Your money will multiply if you donate to our charity. That is my promise to you. Um, and so
Nice.
that is a spiritual principle. And if I don't fulfill my end of the bargain, then I myself will become a pauper. So
Hmm.
I have a responsibility to be in care of other people's money and engage it properly. So you can find us there in business. Our office number, you can contact us at 817-389-7722. You can call or text us, and we're here to assist you. I do offer consulting. We offer, we can help form people's trusts. We can assist in the business credit development, personal credit development, and personal credit restoration. And then here very soon, my hedge fund will be live with our private bank, and people will be able to participate in that comfortably, and the sky's really the limit. I'm really, really thankful. A lot of things are kind of all coming into place at once. So, and I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to have some of my friends help me to try to be more active on social media. I'm not very active. I just, like you're saying, I prefer not to be because I get kind of sucked into it and I don't want to. So, but I'm trying to learn, like we've talked about before, to have a healthy, arm's length relationship. So I'm gonna do my best after this show to try to be a little more interactive on those platforms.
Nice.
Nice, awesome, man.
Well, yeah. Well, either way, we found you. We'll definitely keep spreading the word because I mean, a lot of people need this, especially right now. So, really, again, appreciate your time, Brendon. Appreciate meeting you, building this relationship. Really excited to be working with you and help people take their life to the next level.
Thank you so much, Gary. It was such a pleasure being on the show, and I look forward to being back.
Thanks, Brendon. See you
See ya.
later, buddy.
Thanks.